Before we jump into new money moves, we need to lock in what we built. Q1 wasn't random, it was foundation. It was stability, our wealth identity, identifying wealth capacity, and the baseline buffer and Brickhouse. If you've ever felt like you're doing the right things, but still not feeling financially safe, this recap will connect the dots. And then I'm shifting to quarter two optionality. That's the real flex because income isn't freedom, choices are. Let's get into it.
Yeah, building like nobody could.
What's happening, my optionality builders? We are building real power on purpose. Welcome back to the Do Different Better show, where we talk wealth wisdom and money moves for simple and strategic growth. I'm your wealth BFF and wealth alignment coach, Elaine Rasmussen, CEO of Do Different Better and the founder of Integrated Capital Fund and Connect Up and the Social Impact Now organization. Today is a different kind of episode. I just want to let you know straight off the gate. This is going to be really a recap and a setup for what's to come, but not the boring kind. This is a recap that's really a layup because in the first quarter of this year, that started with episode 85, we built a solid foundation. I set you up with some real grounding frameworks for your money journey. We did the unsexy work that makes the rest of the wealth journey actually stick and is sustainable. And we did it under one theme, and that is stability. That's the S in my soul framework. If you've been listening all quarter, I want you to hear this clearly. You didn't just learn content, you built an unshakable but sustainable money system. And systems are what separates people who talk about money from people who actually transform and grow their money, like for real, for real. So today, I'm going to do three things across the three different segments. First, I'm going to recap what stability actually means and the frameworks that I help you install in your life. Next, I'm going to set up the shift into quarter two, which is optionality, which is really the real flex. To close, I'm going to give you an optionality on ramp, the first moves you'll take in the first 7 to 14 days. So this transition isn't just motivational, it's actually operational. And throughout this episode, I'm going to keep saying one phrase. You're going to get tired of me saying it. No shame, just strategy. This is not about feeling bad and relitigating any of your past decisions. This is really about, okay, we're going to name it, we're going to own it, and now that we know what's going on, we're going to move forward and put the things in place so we don't make the same mistakes that we did before. Because stability is not about being perfect, it's about being steady and being predictable. So, let's anchor this in my soul framework. Soul spelled SOLE, because this is the arc we're going to be building on all year. All of my guests that are going to be coming on, we're all going to be talking about this, okay? Soul stands for, the S stands for stability, which is your predictability, your buffers, and your reduced volatility. The O is optionality, which really speaks to your money liquidity, your flexibility, and your availability to actually make different choices or any choices. The L stands for leverage. This is around the assets that we're creating, the ownership that we have, and the influence that we have with or for our money. And then E is for embodiment. This is where we get to make alignment and having decisions that align with living out our values, where we're looking to be, and where we actually are going with our wealth journey from a declarative standpoint, not a reactive standpoint. In quarter one, we stayed in the S. S being for stability, not because stability is the end goal, but because stability is actually the floor. Without the floor, everything else collapses. And a lot of people try to skip stability, often without even knowing it. They go straight to the TikTok investing hack or the Instagram side hustle or some kind of passive income stream. But if your bills are unpredictable and your buffers are thin, leverage becomes risk, and having optionality becomes really an unrealistic fantasy that you'll never be able to achieve. So, what did we actually build in quarter one? If you were listening, you built four foundational frameworks that I will reference repeatedly going forward. The first one is the soul framework. Two is your wealth identity. Three is your wealth capacity. And four is the notion of building a baseline, a buffer, and a brick house sequentially, right? Not all at the same time. So that's okay. Don't worry if you miss them. I'm going to do you a quick recap. We're going to walk through them quickly with the why it matters attached, because this is where people forget the value. So stick with me. Wealth identity, that is your money pattern. Your wealth identity is your default pattern on how you engage or manage money. It is not your personality, it is not your character, it is what is your innate default, which does not mean that it can't change, but it's how it shows up and how it exists today in this moment. Again, no judgment. I named four core identities. Number one, builder. This is the person who says, if I can build the perfect system, I'll feel safe with my money. The next one is the caretaker. They might say, I can't be okay unless everyone else is okay. Then there's the maximizer. I should be further ahead. I really need to optimize what I'm doing with my money right now. And they try to do all the things at the same time. And then there's the fourth one, which is the minimalist strategist. They might say something like, this is way too much and I'll deal with it later. And oftentimes they never come back to it. Here is why all of this matters. Your identity determines your financial behavior under stress. Here's what I mean. Builders tend to overbuild complexity and then avoid or don't even use the system that created. Caretakers leak money through rescuing other people and being managed by guilt and shame. Maximizers chase optimization and hop from one strategy to another strategy, never really giving the previous strategy any time to actually see if it works or align with where they are. My minimalist strategists, they often just avoid the admin that's required until it becomes super expensive. And then they've wasted a lot of money or wasted a lot of time now trying to fix something because they were avoiding. Wealth identity isn't a label for fun or even for punishment. It's a diagnostic tool. Just like when you go into the doctor and they do a diagnosis, or they do a diagnostic to be like, what is going on? They're not making a judgment, but they need to know all the information in order to make a prognosis to tell you what's going to happen and what's going to be the treatment plan. This is no different than that. And it really helps if you stop acting like your money issues are random. They're not random. That's when we lead into your wealth capacity, which is how complex is your life, or what are you actually managing right now financially? Your wealth capacity is what your life can actually hold without breaking into a million pieces. This is where high earners get humbled, because you can earn a six-figure income and still feel stressed. And you're wondering, why do I feel so stressed? I'm making so much more money than I used to. Well, the reason is you might have high fixed costs, or that they're really, really heavy and feel immovable. Maybe your obligations are stacked so much that you can't see a way out. Or your life, the administration of your life is chaotic. If you have to spend a whole day working on what's happening in your financial life, that definitely leads to not wanting to do it. Or your family pulls on you constantly. Maybe it's your cousin, your brother, your siblings, your parents. Or your business income is variable. Maybe you're a consultant and you never know what your income is from month to month. Or just your nervous system is living constantly in alert zone. And that it might be a combination of more of these things or all of these things. Your wealth capacity says, even if the numbers work, your money system might not. And if your system requires constant attention to survive, then that's all the more signal that it might be very fragile. So Q1 was about reducing your fragility. Next, we are going to cover your stability stack. That is your baseline, your buffer, and your brick house. This is what I call your stability stack. So, first is your baseline. That is your minimal viable month of expenses, what it costs to keep life running without any major hiccups. Next level, and these are levels, the second level is your buffer. That is your shock absorber, the cash cushion that keeps normal life from becoming new debt. And then finally, your brick house. This is your resilient fund, the thing that turns disasters into disruptions. And this framework matters because it stops the most common mistakes that people tend to make with their money, and that is trying to build wealth on an unstable base. Of having a baseline actually gives you clarity. Having a buffer gives you breathing room, and having your brick house gives you the power that you need to be able to make different kinds of decisions. Okay. Now, again, you don't try to do these all at the same time. You are starting with wherever you are and you're building one towards the other. You're going to start with your baseline, then move to your buffer, then move to your brick house. The next one is really talking about the soul framework. And in the quarter one, again, we lived in the S, which is stability. Stability is not, I'm never stressed about money. That's not what we're talking about. Stability is, my system is predictable enough that stress doesn't run the show. That's what we're talking about. And in quarter one, which started with episode 85, stability meant fewer open mind loops, fewer surprise bills and overdraft fees, fewer panic checks, more automation, more cadence, thinking about and looking at a weekly reset, a monthly close, and a money system that you can actually trust. Now, that last piece is huge. A lot of money stress is not actually about money. It's about your brain not trusting the system or lack thereof. It recognizes that there isn't a system that's guiding what has to happen and what is actually needed to build the security that you're looking for emotionally, financially, etc. So, here are the stability receipts. Ways that you know that what you did in quarter one actually is working. One, you know what your baseline number is. What is those minimal amount to make your life go from month to month? You can also name your buffer target. What is the goal that you're trying to set up for to move out of baseline and into your buffer zone? You can explain what Brickhouse means as an actual plan. Where are you going? You also should have fewer recurring charges that you can't explain on your credit card or debit card statements. Also, you are not constantly renegotiating your money decisions or regretting or resenting your money decisions. And finally, you can handle money on a schedule and not on panic. Now, I'm going to pause to speak to the listeners who feel like, oh no, oh my gosh, I'm behind. And they're comparing themselves to other folks who maybe started listening to episode 85 on New Year's Day. That's okay. Take a deep breath. You're going to be fine. If you are still stabilizing, you are not behind. You are exactly where you're supposed to be. You are doing the most important part, right? One, you're listening to the show and you're getting things together. You're recognizing where you're at and you're recognizing where you might want to move, right? Because if stability is missing, everything else becomes expensive and you lose and can't make traction in your money journey. So, Q1 was the foundation. And now we're going to make a shift. And this is the transition into quarter two, which starts with episode 99. Stability keeps you from falling apart. Optionality lets you actually move and breathe. So, coming up, I'm going to define for you what optionality actually looks like, feels like, and why it's actually the real flex, especially for my high earners. You're listening to the Do Different Better show. I can't wait to see you in the next segment. I will catch you after the break.
Yeah. So they might be ready to pay.
Welcome back to the Do Different Better show. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen, your BFF Wealth Alignment Coach. Now we're going to get into this next segment. Okay, let's talk about the O in soul. That O stands for optionality. If stability is your floor, optionality is movement. Optionality is the ability to choose without panicking. It's the ability to pivot without everything collapsing. And it's the ability to say no and still be fine and not freak out. And this is the most important reframe of we're going into quarter two, starting with episode 99. Income is not freedom. Optionality is freedom. Because you can earn good money and actually still feel trapped. Maybe it's because you have a lot of fixed costs that are very high. You're living in a bigger home than you were living in. You're sending your kids to private school. It also could mean like your debt is stacked. You've got a lot of debt from a lot of different sources. It can also mean you have a very thin buffer, or you have family obligations that are constant, or your financial system or money system is very fragile, or your job is the only thing keeping this whole thing, a machine, running, right? You may have heard the term the golden handcuffs. You can't possibly think about quitting your job because if you quit your job, your whole life would collapse. Optionality is what loosens that grip. So let's define optionality in 100% plain language. Optionality is liquidity. And remember, liquidity is how much cash you have access to within a 30-day period. So it's liquidity plus flexibility plus a low obligation load. Here's how it shows up. It can show up as you can take a month off if you need to, go on a sabbatical, mini sabbatical. You could change jobs without panicking. You can handle a surprise expense without getting into debt. Maybe it looks like you can invest consistently without having to worry about maybe I should stop after you read every headline or see something on Instagram. It's also about destabilizing yourself. Or you can choose opportunities, not just react to emergencies. Optionality is basically you telling life, I'm not fragile. It's not going to break my whole entire household. Now, optionality isn't one thing. It's multiple forms of flexibility all working together. And here are 4 types of optionality that we're going to be building in quarter two. The first is cash optionality. Again, this is liquidity. Cash you can deploy or access quickly. And it's not just emergency savings, cash that gives you options. This could include a very well-defined buffer or a brick house that is in progress, and often a separate flex fund for transitions and opportunities. Cash optionality is why you can make moves without borrowing more money, particularly expensive money. Number 2, time optionality. Time optionality is when your schedule is so overloaded, you can't even think. You have no space. A lot of people have money but don't have time. And if you have no time, you can't build wealth intentionally. You can only react. And that's not what we're looking for because we don't make decisions well during that time. Optionality, you have fewer obligations, fewer shoulds, fewer recurring commitments that eat your bandwidth, and less admin because you have really solid systems that are set up that help keep you on track. This ties directly to your wealth capacity. If your life is already maxed out, optionality requires reducing the load, not actually adding tasks. Number 3 is income optionality. Income optionality is when your income isn't hanging on one fragile thread. This could mean having multiple income streams. It could be having a side hustle that actually provides runway. It could be that you've acquired or have a high demand skill that maybe is outside of what you actually get paid for in your profession. It could be your ability and negotiating power. It could also be a waterway of alternate income streams like a rental property or stock dividends or something else. For high earners, income optionality is often the difference between I can leave this job, or I can't leave this job, or I can leave this job. Number 4, decision optionality. Decision optionality is the ability to make decisions without spiraling or having feelings of desperation. This is where your decision rules, cadence, and systems come in. People with decision optionality think about don't change their plans based on a mood, but clearly define needs, goals, or objectives. They don't renegotiate the same choices daily or hourly. They don't need constant validation from the internet or other people. And they don't turn every money decision into a referendum on their self worth. Is that sounding familiar? Optionality reduces anxiety because it reduces consequences. Now let's talk about what kills optionality, because this is where things can get really real. Here are some of the most common optionality killers for particularly high earners, but these apply to lots of folks. This is your high fixed cost. This might be your monthly chokehold of expenses. The also is stacked obligations. So that means your debt plus your payments plus any other commitments. It could also be not having a buffer. So every time something comes up, it's a surprise and you panic and just borrow to be able to take care of that situation. Now, let me be clear. I'm not saying that borrowing is a bad thing, but if we're borrowing in response, that puts us in a very leveraged or tenuous or friction focused situation. And that's not what I want you to do. If you are taking on debt, I want you to be conscious of it. I want you to be aware of it. I want you to have some control over it and know how you're going to manage it. The other thing is over responsibility. This looks like you being your family CFO, right? Also, it could be overexposure. Overexposure. That's your doom scrolling on finance content and constantly second guessing yourself, right? And also having no cadence. So money lives in your head as opposed to living in a system, a predictable system. And here is why this is key. Optionality killers aren't always obvious because sometimes they actually look like success. Maybe it's a bigger home can look like success and still kill optionality. It could be that you have premium everything can look like success and still kill optionality. Because being the rescuer for your family and friends can look like love, but still kill optionality. So that's why in the coming up episodes, we're going to stop measuring success by the lifestyle and start measuring success by flexibility. Now, here's a quick wealth identity tie-in because different identities lose optionality in different ways. For those of you who are my builders, you lose optionality by building overly complex lives and systems. Caretakers, you lose optionality by funding other people's stability and not prioritizing your own. Maximizers lose optionality by stacking goals and commitments. Minimalist strategists lose optionality by avoiding admin and letting costs drift unmanaged and unchecked. They all have the same outcome, which is you're trapped. And even though you're coming at this from different paths. So the purpose of some of the upcoming episodes is to build optionality intentionally. Not by making more money, although that might happen, but by reducing your obligation load and increasing liquidity and flexibility. And here's how you know optionality is increasing. You can go a full day without thinking about money. You can handle a financial surprise without panicking. your heart racing. You can say no to something that isn't aligned with your needs, goals, or objective. It could be a relationship. You can invest consistently. You can make that move to a job, a business, or a partner without thinking that there are going to be cascading consequences, financial consequences. That is the goal. So I hope you're starting to feel like, oh, some of the things that we talked about in earlier episodes is starting to click in place, and that this is a step ladder for this entire year. So we've built the stability that we needed, and some of the main concepts like your wealth identity, like your wealth capacity, and understanding the notion of building a baseline, a buffer, and a brick house. And all of those things, those concepts, and those systems that you created as a result of those episodes are now going to be your foundation to moving into what we're going to be talking about in the upcoming episodes for throughout not only this next couple of months, but also for the rest of the year. Now, next up, I'm going to give you the optionality on-ramp. These are going to be 3 moves you can take in the next 7 to 14 days to kick off quarter 2. Especially, you probably already filed your tax return, so I hope you filed your tax return. Now you can actually leverage your tax return, or even if you had a tax bill, this is good information for you to be motivated to do things differently now. Okay? Now, I'm also going to tell you exactly where to go to get the companion resources, because I'm not going to just leave you in theory. I hope you have learned at this point. I am going to be providing you with tactical and practical things that you can do. And if you're listening to this episode in the car and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to miss a word, just bookmark this. You can come back to it. Put time on your schedule. Maybe it's Friday evening, maybe it's Sunday afternoon, maybe it's Saturday morning after you've gone to work out, and just dedicate 30 minutes to sit down and actually put into motion what we're talking about on the show. Okay? So, you've been listening to the Do Different Better show. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen, and we're going to be wrapping up with a solid practical and tactical plan coming up in segment 3. I'll see you after the break. Welcome back to the Do Different Better show. This is your Wealth Alignment BFF, Elaine Rasmussen. So glad you're here, and thank you so much for taking the time to listen. We have been talking about the quarter 1 recap from this year that started with episode 85 and went to episode about 96, 97. And so if you really want to catch up, in the first couple of segments, I've done a recap of all of those episodes. So hopefully they're a little, oral tickler for you to be able to go back into the other episodes and listen to them more intently so that you can be set up for everything that I'm going to be talking about, not only for the rest of this episode, but going into the upcoming episodes for the next 3 months. All right, enough talking. You know me, I want to get into some action. I'm not going to let you leave here without actually putting pen to paper or fingers to your notes app, okay? Because optionality doesn't happen from just understanding and listening to this content. It actually happens from making moves. So I'm giving you 3 moves in the next 19, 18 minutes. They're going to be simple, they're going to be clean, and they're going to be repeatable. That is going to start building optionality immediately. You know me. I'm going to be like, we're going to do a thing. This isn't just, we're not going to be playing around. I want you to treat this as a 7 to 14 day sprint, right? This isn't a forever project. It's not going to run your life, but this is a sprint, okay? A sprint that creates momentum. And you know what I always say? Forward action creates traction, right? So move number 1 is you're going to create a flex fund. This flex fund is different than your buffer fund, right? And if you haven't started your buffer fund, that's fine. That's great. Don't worry about it. Okay. This is your flex fund. And here is the distinction. Your buffer is your shock absorber for your normal life, and your brick house is the resilience for real emergencies. The flex fund is optionality cash, money that supports transitions and opportunities. And when I say money, that could be a lot of things, right? But the flex fund is what lets you say yes to making a career pivot, making a business investment, making a big move, getting a certification. Maybe it's managing a temporary income dip or a strategic risk that isn't reckless. And it also lets you say no. No is a whole sentence, right? It lets you say no. It puts you in the position to feel confident to say no to addressing or letting something burn you out, saying no to a toxic work environment, saying no to being rushed to make decisions, or saying no to desperation. And here's how we can start. Your flex fund, I want you to think about starting small, right? And you may have this right now where you can make this move, or it might be something you need to build to. But you can start small with thinking about just $500 and then moving it to $1,000 and then building to 1 month of baseline. So if you haven't established a baseline yet, that is okay. This flex fund can be the precursor to building a baseline, or it can be a ride along if you already have a baseline and you're working your way towards your buffer. So there's two different ways to think about this. They are not mutually exclusive. You don't have to only pick one. You can do both, but only if you have the wealth capacity to do so. Okay? Here's the easy part. Automate it. Even if it's $25 a week, I started with $10 a week and then moved to $25 a week. I talk about this in episode 1 when I first started my money journey over 30 years ago. The amount matters less than the actual habit that you're building and the separation and recognizing that this money is different than you're living your daily life money. Okay. You know, if you're using an online banking system, usually they give you the option to name the account. So name the account something that makes your brain actually relax. Think of something fun like calling it the Flex Fund or Life Option Fund or Freedom Fund or Do Not Touch Unless It's a Big Money Move Fund, right? Make it fun. This doesn't have to be, I don't want this to be critical. The more we can attach some positive feelings to our relationship with money, the more likely we're going to engage in these habits. So make it super, super fun. Call it, maybe it's like, take this job and shove it fund. Whatever it is that you need to make you want to actually check that fund, stay on top of that fund, manage the system for that fund. That's what you call it. My only request is try to stay away from anything that's negative, right? That's take this job and shove it fun. Like that is like, I don't know, maybe that works for you, but try to frame it in the positive of like, being able to take a month sabbatical fund, right? Whatever that is, try to frame it in the positive, right? Because the whole idea is we want to generate some positive endorphins so that we continue on this journey. And the more positivity we could associate with something that we've normally associated that's painful, the more likely we're going to continue to engage. So we're going to be swapping out our neurotransmitters and our neural pathways around money. Now, optionality, as I've just talked about, is psychological. And your labels actually matter. So be mindful of what you label your fund. Move number 2, reduce your obligation load. This is a great and quick way to buy back freedom fast. Okay? Optionality is not only about adding money, it's also about removing weight. So here's your assignment in move number 2. I want you to identify 3 obligations that you can reduce in the next 7 to 14 days. These obligations can be, maybe it's a subscription, whether it's a magazine subscription or some other platform subscription. Maybe it's a payment plan, meaning that you're going to intentionally pay that off. You've got a plan to pay it off, and ideally within like the next 6 to 12 months. Maybe it's a service, maybe it's a fixed cost, or maybe it's a commitment that eats time and money and doesn't really create relational or spiritual value. Maybe it's a lifestyle expense that you don't actually value or use. For example, if you're airline Sky Club member, but you only fly on that airline 3 to 4 times a year, or you're paying for someone else's Netflix account, how can you use that money to build your optionality or your flex fund? And I want you to choose 3, not 10, not 5. I want you to choose 3. Okay? Only 3. Then I want you to apply one simple rule: one out, one in, one out. If you add a new monthly payment, it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a subscription, no matter what it is, you have to remove one. So let's just say you have a something that you're paying off. You've got a bill that you're paying off. Maybe it's a buy now, pay later, and you've got 2 more payments. I want you to encourage you to do a couple of things. Either one, see if you can just pay that off now. See if you can pay. Can you do without a couple of lattes and just be able to pay it off now instead of paying it over the next couple of months? Or if you can't do that and you're going to pay it off in the next couple of months, don't add something else. Okay? So if you're going to add a new monthly payment, remove one. But if you've removed one, don't necessarily go out and find another one to replace it. That also is not the goal, unless it actually serves you, right? It serves you in building your flex fund, your baseline, your buffer, or your brick house, right? So that could be taking a loan out on your insurance, a loan out from your insurance to be able to buy a business or pay down your house, or because you have a high interest rate on your house. Those are some ways that you're leveraging it for your wealth journey. This rule of one out, one in, this rule protects optionality because it forces you to make trade-offs, right? Not suffering, but trade-offs. And if you want the fastest optionality, wins, look at your subscription sprawl, right? I want you to look at your insurance drift. We talked about that on a couple of episodes ago. Look at your convenience spending, right? We all know that convenience costs more, right? Buying on Instacart, I don't know if you've realized this, but in some stores, the Instacart price actually is more than the store price. So that is a quick way of just systematizing your grocery shopping to be able to actually go to the store. I've looked at it on my personal shopping. Sometimes you need Instacart. You're just like, hey, I'm not feeling well. I need to get to the store. I need groceries in my house. Understandable. But if you look at that over time, I have noticed that there's a $20 to $50 total grocery bill difference between the prices that I pay on Instacart and the price that I would pay in the store. So think about that, right? I understand the convenience is great, but understand the price that you're paying, especially if your wealth capacity is very limited, right? Your fixed costs begin to creep, and any payment that makes you reset your life. These are the things that we actually want to think about, because resentment is a signal that obligation doesn't match your values. If you hate yourself for doing DoorDash 3 times a week, then maybe you should stop DoorDashing 3 times a week. Even if you reduce it maybe to once a week. I'm not saying to live the life of a monk. That is also not the goal here. But it is to create a more financially manageable life that actually builds to where you're trying to go in your wealth journey. Maybe it's to buy a house, maybe it's to live abroad, maybe it's to make a big move, maybe it's to be able to be financially secure to go start that business that you wanted to do, whatever the case may be is, okay? Move number 3. and I want you to install 2 decision rules. This is around stop negotiating. Optionality requires decision optionality, less second guessing. So I want you to choose 2 decision rules that reduce chaos immediately. And here's rule number 1. This is called the cadence rule. The cadence rule is I handle money on a schedule, not on panic. This requires a weekly reset and a monthly close, and no renegotiating in between those times. Rule number 2, the 24-hour rule. For any non-essential purchase over a threshold, you wait 24 hours. Maybe that's $50, maybe that's $75, maybe it's $1,000. It's all going to depend on where you are financially. I know for me, when I was a single mom, mine was $50. I could not purchase something. I had to wait 24 hours if I wanted to purchase something over $50. And what I realized consequently, or now putting it in the cart, I'm not going to press the purchase button. I can make it put it in the cart and not make the purchase for 24 hours. What I found is that actually just putting in the cart creates a satisfaction for me. And I find that the next day, the endorphins aren't running and I really don't want it as bad as I thought that I wanted it. Now, sometimes I do, but I find that more often than not, I don't. For any investment move driven by urgency, you will wait 24 hours. Urgency is usually anxiety wearing a very dirty trench coat. If you're a caretaker or a family CFO, you might choose a different rule. Maybe it's the support budget rule. That says, I don't give outside my planned support budget. Operating rule, plan. That's the operating word, because random giving kills optionality fast. Now, if you do these 3 moves, a flex fund, reduce obligations, and decision rules, you will feel optionality increasing within 2 weeks. You will feel it in your body. You will not be as tense anytime the conversation of money comes up, anytime you look at your banking app, anytime you get your 401k statement from your job in the mail. Because optionality isn't just money, it's nervous system safety. Now, let me set you up for expectations for the upcoming episodes, because you know me, and for all my recovering type A's, I want to let you know where you're going, okay? So that nothing will be surprising. You can start to let it start to sink in and start to just marinate with you about, okay, where are we going? So coming up, I'm going to be covering how to calculate your optionality score. I'm going to be talking about fixed cost restructuring. I'm also going to be talking about the liquidity ladder. This is where your money should be living. And I'm going to be writing you with decision rules for investing and spending and how to build flex funds and runway. We're going to talk about boundaries that protect your optionality and how optionality becomes the bridge into L, which is in my soul framework, which is leverage. Okay? Because once you have optionality, leverage becomes strategic instead of desperate. And that's where we're trying to go, right? Now, I'm going to give you the content call to action because, again, I want this to be actionable, right? We are not here to play any games, okay? If you want any of the companion tools that I've talked about today or in previous episodes, you can go to my website, which is www.dodifferentbetter.com. Some of these tools will be in the descriptions of some of the YouTube at Do Different Better. You can catch some of those tools there, but if there's any tool that's missing from the description in the YouTube channel, you can go to www.dodifferentbetter.com and definitely make sure you take the wealth capacity or the wealth identity assessment. We're going to be putting the wealth capacity assessment on there coming up really, really soon. But when you start off with your wealth identity, that's the most important thing to understand how to listen to the episodes coming up and where you might be fitting, because I'm going to give you solutions that are very specific to your particular wealth identity as well as your wealth capacity. So again, if you want some of these companion tools and resources, you can make sure you go to www.dodifferentbetter.com. So there you can take the wealth identity quiz and access the Soul Quick Start plus Stability to Optionality checklist. It's going to be living there for you. And if you want the deeper walkthrough where I'll show you how to calculate your optionality score and set up your flex fund and rules, you can go to my YouTube channel and watch the recap deep dive plus the optionality kickoff. So, because the difference between learning and transformation is repetition and consistency. And that's what we're here to do. And YouTube is where you can replay or you can listen to these episodes on your favorite channel, whether that's AM 950, or you can listen to it on your favorite place where you find podcasts and listen to previous episodes. Now, I'm going to bring us home and I'm going to close with this. Quarter one, which started with episode 85, was about stability and building your floor, your foundation. Coming up next in the next 3 months, that's going to be about optionality and building freedom. If you want power, you don't just build income. You need to build choices. Turn income into optionality so that you can do different better. Don't forget to follow, like, and subscribe on all the socials. Instagram, you can find me on LinkedIn. My Instagram is Do Better with Elaine. I can't wait to see you next week. And leave me a comment. Tell me how things are working out for you. Let me know what I can talk more about. Tell me more of what you'd like to see less of. I really want to hear from you. So don't forget to catch me on the comments. I can't wait to see you next week.